Morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'd like to call this meeting to order today. Wyoming Water Development Commission Select Water Committee Workshop Joint Meeting, November 9th. We have a joint meeting today. Do the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Is Kaylee here today? Okay. Commissioner Kaylee, can you do the roll call, please? Thanks.
Yes, sir. Chairman Glick,
Here.
Vice Chairman Yankee. Ron Cayley, the secretary here. Commissioner Anselmi Dalton. Commissioner Choma. Here. Commissioner Craig. Commissioner Cott. Here. Commissioner Lawson. Here. Commissioner Little. Here. And Commissioner Suker.
Here,
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Commissioner Kaylee. Roll call today. Okay. The Select Water Committee is gonna do the roll call. Pass it over to Representative Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's nice to be with you today. Abigail, would you do a roll call for us, please?
Lost the sound.
Representative Banks, are you there?
Here.
Oh, Abigail doesn't have the microphone. Okay, sorry, we're going to fix that. Hold on.
Representative Banks,
Here.
Representative Eklund, Representative Larson,
Here.
Representative Nyman, Representative Paxton, Senator Boner,
Excused.
Senator Driscoll,
Here.
Senator French,
Here.
Senator Guru,
Excused.
Senator Steinmetz,
Excused.
Vice Chairman Hicks,
He's here. Present.
and Chairman Simpson.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Abigail. While I have the microphone, I'd like to make a couple of comments. First of all, we welcome our visitors today. We appreciate you coming from around the state and being here. You'll notice a really large group here. This is intended to intimidate you, just so you know, as you get up to, no, we hope that won't have the case. What we have here is two committees. My committee is the Legislator Committee, and it is the Select Water Committee, and it has 12 members on it. And Chairman Glick's group is the Wyoming Water Development Commission. They're appointed by the governor, and there's 10 members of their body. You can tell by the title blocks that the tan versus the gray. So you'll observe that today the legislators are participating. Chairman Glick allows us to ask questions and participate, but only the only the commission members actually vote on action items. And the reason that is because in a subsequent meeting in January, the Select Water Committee will come together and we take all of the actions that the commission does today and we bring them together and write two pieces of legislation. We call them the two omnibus bills. And those bills actually appropriate the money for the projects we're talking about today. So once we prepare the legislation, we take that through the Agriculture, Water Resources Committee. We take it before the Appropriations Committee, and then we bring it to the floor. So the legislators here are observing and asking questions. And the reason we're doing that is because ultimately we have to defend the bills on the floor and persuade the other legislators that it's a wise use of state monies to invest in these water projects. Even though we're two separate committees, we have one thing in common, and that is we love our water in the state of Wyoming, and we're advocates of the water development program. And so with that, I thought we'd let you know why we have such a big body here in front of you. We appreciate your patience, and we'll try not to intimidate you. Although Senator Hicks will ask a few difficult questions, but other than that, we're in good shape. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Simpson. Okay. Director Gebhardt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe the next item is the approval of the minutes. I would like to point out, though, for your consideration, that I believe we have a minor error in the minutes that we posted. In the minutes under tab C on page 1, item 3, we had that Commissioner Choma was excused from the last meeting. That was incorrect. He was in attendance. So as you approve that, if I might suggest that you make a motion to strike the word excused on the minutes.
Mr. Chairman, so moved.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Little, seconded by Commissioner Kaylee to remove excuse from the following, Robert Choma. That way can he, I guess you could just take that off and not put nothing behind it, right? Present.
Yeah, we'll just strike the excuse from the
Okay.
minutes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passed.
Mr. Chair, I also move that we approve the minutes.
Okay. Commissioner Kaylee makes a motion to approve the minutes. Commissioner Yankee seconds. That's for October 8th, 2021. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Okay, agenda item number 5 is planning closeout memos. That'll be Lagrange Water Master Plan Level 1. Director Gebhardt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And before we do the planning closeout memo, could I request an addition to the agenda? Under item 8, I would like to add the Little Wind River Storage Study Phase 2 project. And also the Middle Piney Reservoir time extension item.
What, anybody make a motion?
I so move we add those two projects to our.
Motion made by Larry Suker to add Little Wind and then the Middle Piney extension. Seconded by Commissioner Choma. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Director Gebhardt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Lagrange Water Master Plan Level 1 Planning Closeout Memo. I will let the project manager, Julie Gonzar, present that closeout memo.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Morning.
Do we have the tab reference on this one? I didn't write that down.
CD, excuse me.
Tab D in your notebooks for the closeout memo. This is the Lagrange Water Master Plan closeout memo. And I'll just run through some of the highlights of this project. The appropriation for this project was $114,000 from the 2020 session, excuse me. The consultant that we had under contract for this project was AVI. Subconsultants was IMEG, Hinckley Consulting, and Northline GIS for the project. The original contract amount was $113,260. State of Wyoming saved some money on this project as the final contract amount was $104,258.58. So a savings of just over $9,000. So they came in under budget on this project. An expiration date on the contract is June 30th, 2022. So just a brief description of the project. The town of Lagrange has approximately a population of 438 people, a total of 208 taps. The town is supplied with groundwater from the shallow Lagrange aquifer. They have 2 production wells that have a total average yield of 450 gallons per minute. The supplied groundwater is untreated and stored in an above ground tank with a capacity of 300,000 gallons just to the northeast. So this is the first master plan that the town of Lagrange has ever had completed since their system was installed in the early 80s. So they were certainly due for a master plan. This plan has given the town the technical information that they need to meet their repair and replacement goals and create a financial foundation for maintenance in the future. The recommendations that were developed were to address some water quality concerns, infrastructure upgrades, and a few non-structural changes as well. On the second page, you'll see a list of some of the recommendations here. But they had no prior GIS or hydraulic model. They also did not have access to accurate maps. So as a part of this master plan, they were provided with survey grade GIS, a hydraulic model, and upgraded maps. I'm going to talk about the first 5 bullet points here that were some of the major recommendations that were made from this master plan. The first bullet point solves the problem of redundancy. One of their largest vulnerabilities was the single transmission line from the tank coming under the railroad tracks. If anything were to happen to that line, they would be dependent on the 2 wells. It would stress out their pumps and they wouldn't have enough fire flow. So the first recommendation was to construct a 12-inch transition main on the east side of the railroad tracks, connecting the storage tank to the southern extents of the distribution. One of their other recommendations was to construct an elevated storage tank in the town proper to provide additional potable water and additional fire protection for the town. The other recommendations included a couple of replacement programs. They have about 54 fire hydrants across the town that can no longer be maintained. They just don't have, well, that type of equipment isn't really made anymore, so it can't be maintained anymore. So they're completely out of date. So one of the recommendations was a complete 5-year plan to replace all the fire hydrants. And the cost estimates are at the end of these bullet points as well. Also, due to not being able to maintain and not having the right, the equipment kind of being out of date is their water valves. So they have a replacement program that was recommended to replace all the water valves. And there's about 160 or so that would need to be replaced over time. And these are 5-year plans to get that done. One of the other structural recommendations includes evaluating Fox Hills water for possible blending with both of their wells to ensure that their arsenic levels do not exceed EPA standards. That was one of their main concerns as going into this master plan, is that their arsenic levels were approaching EPA standards. So this addresses a potential solution for that problem. And also the construction of a 6-inch main within East Street to provide better looping for the northwest corner and add better protection for the school and several homes, just in case there's an outage or a line break. The last 2 bullet points just kind of talk about the non-structural recommendations with their concentrations of nitrates, arsenic, and sodium, just making sure that the town kind of remain alert to changes in land use and application of chemical across the recharge area. And then that last bullet point just talks about bringing their water rights into conformity during certain times of the year when they have high demand across the town. On July 15th of this year, they did their draft report presentation at the town hall as part of one of their town hall meetings. And last page, the recommendation is that the WWDO recommends acceptance of the final report submittals and closing the consultant contract. The town has applied for a level 2 feasibility project, which is part of this meeting this afternoon.
Thank you.
If there's any
Anybody-
questions, I can try to answer them.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Hicks.
one question, Julie, when the consultants are doing these level 1 studies, do they all, particularly in towns the size of Lagrange and these very smaller communities, sometimes they see the $5 million price tag on this and it just automatically scares them off. When we do these studies, do we also provide additional information as to where potential funding is as we move forward, RUS, SRF, water development, all these other, USDA programs or Clean Water Act programs. So they know that as we move to level 2 and potential level 3, I've just seen over the years, sometimes these just stop at this level because there's a fear that we can't come up with 400 people are going to generate $500 million in water infrastructure in the next 5 years. So was that included in the nature moving forward, or would that be done at level 2?
Mr. Chairman, part of the scope of work of these level 1s is to go over all of the different funding opportunities and different options for them to be able to enter into programs to fund these different projects. I believe that's also considered at the level 2 level as well.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Mr. Chair. I have a
Commissioner Kaylee.
quick question for Ms. Gonzer. The above ground storage tank that they currently have, is it a covered tank? I haven't been out there, so I don't know. Is it covered?
Yes, it is covered.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Any
Mr.
other,
Chairman,
Commissioner Zucker?
I just have one quick one, I guess, and maybe it's too early to ask. But what are their rates now that exist within the town?
Mr. Chairman, they currently have a flat rate. And I believe it is $22, which increased a couple of dollars as what they've had in the past. That is something that they would like to also change as well because of that flat rate. Users have unlimited water for that amount, but I believe it's 22 at this time.
And the consideration of metering their water, I think, is another question that I'd have. I believe all communities should be metered. And I don't see that is in their part of their development of their level 1 study. I just was curious about that.
Mr. Chairman, yes, so that was addressed in the report, that they have meters, they're just not red. And that is something that they would like to change in the future. I think they're kind of working their way down that road, starting first with starting to increase those rates per month. Did that answer your question?
Thank you. That does answer my question.
Thank you. But any other questions, comments? Thank you. We have a motion.
Mr. Chairman. I move
That's almost
acceptance.
done.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move acceptance of the Lagrange Water Master Plan Level 1 Study Project Report as being complete. And further, the WWDC makes the following findings relative to this project. That the commission recommend proceeding to the next level of project development upon the submittal of an appropriate funding application by the sponsor.
Motion made by Commissioner Anselmi Dalton, seconded by Commissioner Yankee, right? All in favor, say aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Director Gebhardt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next item on the agenda is a groundwater grant, a groundwater exploration grant contract for Skyline Improvement and Service District. And I will let Project Manager George Mosier talk to you about that project.
Good morning.
Morning.
For your consideration today is a groundwater exploration grant program application for Skyline Ranch and Improvement and Service District. Some of the commission may remember that during last meeting, we presented a closeout memo on a level 2 study for Skyline. One of the recommendations coming out of that level 2 was that Skyline investigate some options for augmenting their supply. They'd identified that during some peak demand times that Skyline was at risk of not having enough instantaneous supply of water. Skyline Ranch, just to remind you all, is located just west of Jackson. It is still east of the Snake River. So their source of supply currently is 2 groundwater wells that target the Snake River alluvial aquifer. It's about a 90 lot subdivision. And this groundwater grant proposes to use $176,250 out of the groundwater exploration grant program funds. And then the remainder of the project balance, total project balance is anticipated to be $235,000. And the Improvement and Service District will bring a cash match of $58,750 to complete the project. That's a 75-25 match. And they are looking at targeting a well also in the Snake River alluvial aquifer and hoping to find something on the neighborhood of about 500 gallons per minute to augment their supply. With that, I guess I would back up just a second and remind folks that the groundwater exploration grant program is something that funds are already set aside for. It doesn't require project-specific legislation. So current balance in that project fund is roughly $1.7 million. It was last augmented in 2019. I believe also that the consultant, Nelson Engineering, and perhaps a couple of board members from Skyline Ranch Improvement and Service District were planning on joining. And if they are on the line and would like to add anything else to their application, we could probably patch them in.
I'll talk to to my counterpart son today and let him know that we talked.
Yes, can anybody hear me? This is Josh Kilpatrick, Nelson Engineering.
Maybe the next step.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I'd just like to say that this well, as George had mentioned, is to augment supply. And right now they do have 2 wells. Their peak demands are borderline approaching capacity. So with the additional well, one added benefit to that, or I guess 2 would be additional system redundancy, along with plans for future fire protection, which wasn't necessarily mentioned, but I'll just add that and I'll mute myself again. Thank you.
See.
Hello, this is Jim Lewis. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm the Director and Treasurer Secretary of the Skyline Improvement District. And really to maybe address a question that was raised for the Lagrange project. We basically charge $619.41 to each lot owner a year, which comes down to $51.62 a month. And our water usage rate is $1.70 per 1,000 gallons. We are also currently having a rate study done by Carl Brown. And we hope to have that concluded by the end of December. With that, I'll mute myself.
Is there anyone else online that would like to speak? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I would entertain any questions or perhaps ask them of the folks on the phone if there are any questions.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Senator Hicks.
Mr. Chairman, within the groundwater exploratory program, typically we drill a pilot well here to ensure that we do that and then come back if that proves up. So is this proposed new well, are we going to do that program where we drill the pilot well, or is because this is a known aquifer, we'd actually just go straight for a well?
Mr. Chair, I would anticipate in this case that since the sponsor comes forward with the project and ultimately owns the facility at the end, I would have no problem with go ahead and drill something that looks like a regular production well for testing, since as noted, it's a relatively proven aquifer. Where we stop though is we would stop before providing any kind of permanent pumping equipment or providing any tie into their system.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I just have a quick comment, Mr. Chairman. Just an idea, how much of your existing pipeline, your distribution percentage is AC to PVC pipe?
So I believe that.
Yes, and the other part of it, let me reiterate that. What is your anticipation of that AC pipe being replaced? Do you have a timeline for replacement? I suppose that's one of your factors here. If it was put in 1970, that pipe is, my experience with AC pipe isn't excellent, I guess. It might be good, but it's not excellent. Anyway, give me an outline of how much of that you have and what the condition of it is.
Mr. Chair, I might ask if Josh Kilpatrick could answer that question.
Sure, this is Josh. The AC pipe that's in the system consists of approximately 50% of all distribution main. I don't have the lineal footage offhand. It's a fair amount though. Cost estimates in the level 2, I think we're around $4.5 million to replace all the distribution. So considering that it'd be about half that value to replace the AC pipe. As far as timeline goes, in the next 5 years, they're looking at some storage tank and supply improvements to meet demands. And it's more like a 10-year outlook to start replacing distribution main. Along with that, there's considerations for putting in fire hydrants for added fire protection, as well as putting in new service lines.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Senator Hicks.
Mr. Chairman, Director, I'm just wondering with the number of, seems like that we've looked at one or two other projects for water and sewer improvement districts there outside of the city limits of Jackson. Have we ever looked at a regionalization type plan for that area down there?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Hicks, I don't know the specific answer to that, but I'm fairly certain that a lot of our level 2 or level 1 projects have looked at some version of connecting to the larger system, but I can't tell you why the decision was made not to.
Well, and maybe even as far down as, you get down there in that Bondurant, I don't know. It's just something that we've done with a lot of other projects around the state, is looking at a regional project instead of punching holes and having all these little districts scattered all over the place. And I just didn't know if we'd ever looked at that in that part of Teton County.
I do remember some of the previous level 1s that for some of those districts in the area that did look at that, but like I said, I don't remember why they chose not to regionalize. Certainly something we could look at.
Commissioner Cott.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's a great question, and maybe a question that we want to ask the project proponents.
This is Josh Kilpatrick again. There were considerations made for regionalization, connection of Skyline to town of Jackson. There's also two other subdivisions there, Indian Paintbrush or districts, and Bar Y. From a hydraulic standpoint and topographic standpoint, just considering, let's just say we connect to the town of Jackson, what that would require is we would need to install booster pumps because the pressures are too low within their system. Then there's the added, of course, considering additional fees for connecting to the town itself and utilizing their water. There's no sense, at least in my mind, that the town would want to inherit any infrastructure within Skyline. So that kind of works against it. With the Indian Paintbrush and the Bar Y subdivisions, both those pump to tanks that are quite high in elevation. However, we'd need a separate transmission line that would connect down to the Skyline distribution system along with pressure reducing valves. The unfortunate case there is that the Skyline wells, there's no benefit to Bar Y or Indian Paintbrush to use Skyline's wells without putting in a whole new transmission line that would be very high pressure to get it to the top of the hill. So with that, just looking at the additional costs to connect to those systems, it wasn't a considered option.
Thank you. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I would just add that I believe all of our level 1s, we request that they look at regionalization where possible. So that is part of the program that we run.
Thank you. Okay, Director Gephardt.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that's the presentation. If there's a desire to make a recommendation to approve.
Skyline, the request for Skyline number for a well.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Cott, seconded by Commissioner Little. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Thank you. Director Gephardt.
Mr. Chairman, because this will generate a contract signature, does Select Water need to make any action on that? I will add that the funds are already appropriated, but it is a contract over $5,000.
Mr. Chairman, that is the standard. If the office, I haven't reviewed the contract for this. I wasn't alerted to it. So if the office thinks they need approval, then I would go with that.
Mr. Chairman,
Chairman Simpson. Go ahead.
Committee members, we would request a motion to approve this project pending legal review of the contract.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question before we vote on the motion?
We don't have a motion, but you're welcome to ask a question since we're a
All
little
right.
bit in.
Question, Director Gephardt, so what's the timing of this if the contract's executed with the authorization today? When would it expect to be released? And does it have to go out through the normal consultant selection? Well, it's a groundwater exploration program. So walk us through the timeline. I'm just trying to see, Mr. Chairman, if it's absolutely imperative that we would approve this today, or if we come back, if there was adequate time next time to give our staff a chance to review that. That's the question as I'm trying to get to. What's the time sensitive nature of this motion?
Mr. Chairman, as far as logistics, of the timing, once the contract is approved, the district can proceed. I do not know if the district's under a crunch to have this done. Did you have? I was going to add that all of these contracts are approved through the AG office. So if you guys would like time to review it, I certainly have no problem with that. But all contracts before signature go through the AG's office. So we can certainly, if you would like more time to review the contract, that's fine.
Mr. Chairman, I visited with Abigail and she is prepared to review that later this morning. And so I'd recommend we table the committee's motion until later in the morning when Abigail can report to us her findings on the contract. So let's just sit on this and proceed, and we'll come back to it later on.
Mr. Chairman, if we were so inclined, we could also just move it to the agenda for tomorrow to approve any of these contracts as part of our regular Select Water Committee meeting.
Either way, we'll wait for Abigail to report back to us and then we can decide when to slide it back in the agenda. That works.
Yeah, that's fine, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. I guess we'll move on then. Director Gephardt. go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next item 7 is small water project program agreement amendments. We've got 5 amendments under this section. They're all very similar and they're under tabs F through J. And we can go through them individually and vote on them individually, or you can do this. You could probably do it as a block. They're all time extension projects. And the theme is very common. Material shortages caused by COVID. They're having problems getting materials to these project sites. So the first project is the Blue Rim Desert Allotment Stock Water Development Project Agreement. This is with the Sublette County Conservation District. I will pause there. Would you prefer to run through all of these descriptions and then, or do you want to vote independently?
What's the commission's?
Let's do them as a block.
Okay, we'll do it as a block.
Okay. And Mr. Chairman, the next project is Amendment 2 to the CR Irrigation Pipeline Project Agreement. This is through the Little Snake Conservation District. Again, this is difficulty in getting materials. This is also a 1-year extension. Next project under tab H is Amendment 2 to the PK Pipeline Project Agreement. This one is with the Little Snake Conservation District. It's a 1-year time extension for the same purposes, supply issues. Tab I is Amendment 2 to the Salisbury State Land Well Project Agreement with Little Snake River Conservation District. It's a 1-year time extension. Again, supply issues. And tab J, Amendment 2 to the Short Allotment Water Well Project Agreement, again with the Little Snake River Conservation District. 1-year time extension, supply issues are the reason for that too. And I'll point out that all of these are amendments. The second amendments to these contracts, the first amendments, if you remember, had to do with the 41-day public notice. And we had to change those contracts to take that out of those contracts. So that was Amendment 1. And then these time extensions are just for an Amendment 2 to each of these contracts.
Anybody have any questions or comments for Director Gebhardt? We need a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve the time extensions on these contracts.
Second.
Commissioner Lisa Thomas Dalton made the motion.
I second.
Commissioner Kaylee seconds. All in favor, say aye. Second at first. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Is Jody here today?
Mr. Chairman, Jody is not present today.
Okay, I was just. All right, go ahead and move forward, Director Gebhardt.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next block of projects on page 2 of the agenda is item 8, dam and reservoir contracts and amendments. The first project that we'll talk about is a memorandum of agreement between the Little Snake River Water Conservancy District and the Water Development Office. What this is the district has secured funding to assist in some of the planning and design, as well as the NEPA for this project. So this is a 50-50 split between the water development and the district to fund the NEPA project. The next project we're going to talk about is the NEPA contract, third-party NEPA contractor. So this MOA establishes an agreement between the two parties that spells out how these funds are paid to the contractor. And really the way it's going to work is water development will receive an invoice from the consultant. We will pay it, and then we will submit that invoice to the Conservancy District, and they will reimburse us for their 50%. So that's essentially what is spelled out in this MOA. Jason, did you have anything to add?
Anybody have any questions for Director Gebhardt or Jason? Thank you. We have to have a motion on this?
Yes, we would need to approve the MOA.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that we approve the MOA.
Second. Motion made by Commissioner Little, seconded by Commissioner Kaylee. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Thank you. Motion passed. Thanks, Jason. West Fork Reservoir Project, Director Gephardt, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I mentioned, this is the contractor services agreement, and this is between Water Development Commission and SWCA Incorporated. This is a contract to perform the contract services as a third-party NEPA consultant for the West Fork Reservoir Project. We've gone through a consultant selection. The money for these projects has been previously appropriated, I believe, and started in 2017 or 2018. So this has been coming for quite a while, and we're finally hitting the ground running on the NEPA part of this project. So this contract is effective through December 31st of 2024. And as I just mentioned, the Water Development Commission will pay 50% of this, and then the MOA will pay the other 50% of all these projects. So the total contract amount is $1,190,819.58. And I would stand for any questions.
Any questions or comments for Director Gephardt? Do I hear a motion for this?
I so move we accept this West Fork Reservoir Project.
I hear a second. Motion made by Commissioner Suker, seconded by Commissioner Cott to approve the West Fork Reservoir Project, third-party NEPA contractor services. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. Director Gephardt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now we're on to one of the added agenda items that I requested earlier in the meeting. This is for the Middle Piney Reservoir Project. And this is actually, the recommendation is actually under tab A of the recommendation notebook. What we're asking for is a 2-year time extension for the Middle Piney Reservoir. If you remember, we had some pretty good discussions in August on this project. The current contract date is July 1st of 2022. We're asking to extend the project through July 1st of 2024. This allows that additional grouting that we discussed in August. And then we expect that to be completed in the fall of next year. But we wanted to extend it so that we can do some monitoring following that and not close out the contract. And I'd stand for any questions.
Any questions or comments for Director Gephardt? Do you want to do these separate? Is that how you want to do it?
I believe so, Mr. Chairman. Yeah. We'll
Okay.
talk about them.
Do we hear a motion for the time extension?
Mr. Chair, I recommend we have a time extension for the Middle Piney Reservoir Project.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Kaylee, seconded by Commissioner Suker for the 2-year time extension for the Middle Piney Reservoir. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passed for the 2-year time extension. Then we go down, what was the other one? Oh yeah, Little Wind River. Director Gephardt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next project I'll talk about is the account 3 sponsors contingency fund request. We discussed this yesterday. We're requesting to add $10 million to the dams and reservoir account number 3, the contingency fund, for many of the reasons we discussed yesterday. But we have a lot of things happening in with our dams and reservoirs. We're excited for that. And so we just wanted to be able to be flexible. And with that, we're requesting an additional $10 million be put into this, or be obligated to the sponsors contingency fund. And I stand for any questions.
Any questions for Director Gebhardt?
I do have a question to Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Sucre?
I thought that 10 million was usable for other areas besides just this one. Is that correct or not? I thought we were putting 10 million into a contingency fund for use, not only to this project. Am I wrong on that?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, we moved off of Middle Piney. And this is a new recommendation under tab B of your recommendation notebook. And you're exactly right. This is only dealing with the contingency fund. This recommendation is, but this contingency fund can be used for any project under the dam and reservoir program. We also have already established contingency funds for water development account 1 and also water development account 2. So we have those contingency funds in each of these accounts. What we're talking about is only for account 3, but it could be used for any project under that account, funded
Okay.
under that account.
Well, that clears the air. So thank you for that
Certainly.
comment.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? We need a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we put an additional $10 million in the contingency fund for the Little Wind River project. That's not it. Okay.
No, it'd be not for the wind, not for a specific project, but into the sponsor contingency fund.
Here a second.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Cott. Seconded by Commissioner Choma. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Chairman Simpson?
Mr. Director, to point of clarification on that. So the commission just moved to move $10 million into that contingency fund. That's one of the items that we need as legislators to pick up and place on the omnibus bill. Is that correct? So it's not, it just didn't happen there. It's only going to happen upon the legislature approval of the omnibus bills.
Mr. Chairman, that is correct. This is money that is in the program, but we will go through the omnibus bill to appropriate it to this fund.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Director Gebhardt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The final project on the dams and reservoirs, this was a handout. It should be in the front cover of your recommendation notebook. We discussed this project yesterday as a newcomer that didn't get to us in time to put it in the printed version. But this is for the Little Wind River Storage Study Phase 2. We discussed yesterday that this amendment would add $150,000 to the existing project so that we can continue with some of the field work to further vet the preferred site on the Little Wind storage study. And I or Jason would stand for any questions.
Anybody have any questions or comments for Director Gebhardt or Jason?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to.
Commissioner Yankee?
Yeah, I'm like I say, I'm really happy to see this project moving forward. I'd like to nominate the first sentence, irrigation shortages have long been documented in the Wind River based upstream of Boise Reservoir for the understatement of the year. When I look at the amount of unappropriated water the state of Wyoming has in the wind and in that basin, Bighorn Basin there, I think we should be more proactive in trying to get more storage in that area. It's the situation that we have, whether it's on the reservation or south of the reservation there, is that we get so much runoff in the spring coming from our snowpack, and very little of that is captured to do any good later in the season. So we end up having even flooding in June, and then by August, everybody's out of water. So I think I'm really happy to see us look at that. One question I do have is, I know from discussions with our Division III Water Commissioner, that sometimes, and Commissioner Glick might have some insight on this too, that sometimes when we look at storage on the reservation, there is sometimes a little bit of a disagreement between the state and the tribes about what year priority to assign to that storage water. Is that something that's under discussion here, or do you anticipate that might be a problem at all?
Mr. Chairman, I believe that question falls under the purview of the state engineer, and it's our assumption that any new storage built will have a current day water right. Jason, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we've been very clear about that this entire project with the tribes, that it would be a current day water right, not an 1868 right.
Okay, great, thank you.
And I just want to make one comment. Like, I know that they were worried about the current date, I guess, well, whatever day it was to be built or completed. And you know, my own opinion, I really don't see how that would be a issue. And I know the majority doesn't see an issue from the water board perspective. And I talked to a few of them about this, and I think the way that a few of them were trying to get the 1868 water rights for the dam. Whether or not we get it for the dam to 1868 or whatever year it's completed, we still have a higher priority right once it's in the river for stream flow. So Senator Hicks.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Chairman Glick, maybe somebody can answer this question. My understanding is this is any construction on a reservation would have different requirements under NEPA. Or does it have to go through the traditional NEPA process? So can you provide some information on that?
Sure. Mr. Chairman, it's really the traditional NEPA process. We've had that same discussion with the Corps of Engineers to make sure there's, not any details that we're missing. And yes, you still have to get a 404 permit and what you normally would. It's unknown at this point, but I guess anticipated that BIA might be the lead federal agency during NEPA, but they're going to have to follow all the same CEQ regulations that anybody else would.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you. Do we hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman. And I may need some help on wording correctly, but I would move that we move forward with the level 2 phase 2 recommendation for Little Wind storage study.
Second. Motion made by Commissioner Yankee, seconded by Commissioner Salmi Dalton for the proposed budget. 150,000. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. Director Gephardt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I do have one more on the dams and reservoirs. I kind of fibbed earlier that we were done with them, but we're not. We've got a contract amendment. It's a time extension, and this is for the West Fork Reservoir Phase 3 under tab C of your recommendation notebook. And this is a request for a 5-year time extension. The original appropriation was done in 2017. It expires July 1st of 2022. And this funding is what we just talked about with the MOA and the third-party NEPA contractor. So we're requesting a 5-year time extension to keep that project going.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions or comments for Jason or Director Gebhardt? Commissioner Sommerveld.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Remind me, Director Gephardt, I know that we're supposed to, it's funding both Colorado and Wyoming. Have we got a memorandum of agreement with Colorado regarding this dam yet, or is that still in process? Maybe Jason, I guess, will answer that. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, we don't have an MOA between the two states, but the Pothook Water Conservancy District is kind of the sister conservancy district to the Savory Little Snake Water Conservancy District. That's the Colorado side versus the Wyoming side. And they jointly applied for the NRCS funding that was received. So that, I believe, is their match money at this point.
And anyone else have any questions or comments for Jason or Director Gebhardt? Do I hear a motion on this one?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the time extension, the 5-year time extension on the West Fork Reservoir Phase 3 project.
Second.
Second.
Motion made by Lisa and Salma Dalton for the 5-year extension, seconded by Commissioner Suker. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Jason. Okay, Director Gebhardt.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now we're going to spend a little more time in the recommendations notebook. And we will go through these projects. The first set of projects are funding recommendations for the rehabilitation program. This will be account 2, levels 1, 2, or 3 projects. So, Mr. Chairman, the first project under this block, and you can also refer to tab B, I believe, in the meeting notebook was the table that we prepared for all of these projects. So we would be on the second page of those tables. That's kind of a summary of what's in the recommendation notebook. But I'll be going through the recommendation notebook under tab D. The first one is the Bighorn Canal Adobe Creek Check Structure 2022 project. The request for this project is a 67% grant in the amount of $154,100. And this project is to replace an existing check structure. This project was identified in a level 2 study. The check structure is currently non-functional, and it provides a significant amount of water to provides water to a significant amount of irrigated lands. The district itself has 23,802 irrigated acres and 315 landowners. And as I mentioned, this is to replace an old check structure that will improve safety, reliability, and reduce canal maintenance. And I don't know if we have anybody online that wants to speak to agenda item 10. Nobody online. Okay. So I would stand for any questions on the Bighorn Canal Adobe check structure.
Any questions or comments for Director Gebhardt? Director Gebhardt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do we want to make a motion to approve that?
Do I hear a motion?
I so move.
Motion made by Commissioner Cott, seconded by Commissioner Little. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Thank you. Director Gebhardt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next project for your consideration is the Cottonwood Irrigation District Pipeline Replacement 2022.
Mr.
Excuse
Chairman.
me.
Director, I've been notified that we have representatives from Cottonwood and Dry Creek that are en route. Can we table those two and put them down at the bottom of the list so that they can be here for the presentation?
Absolutely. That was Cottonwood and Dry Creek.
Dry Creek.
Certainly.
Thank you.
So with that, Mr. Chairman, we will jump to tab F. And this is the Deaver Irrigation District Rehabilitation 2022. This is a level 3 construction project. The request is for 30% of the project cost in the amount of $817,000. The sponsor is responsible for 70% of the project. I'll let you explain it.
Yes, sir.
Please state your name.
My name is Jerry Dart. I'm the manager of the Deaver Irrigation District. The D52 project began life obviously as an open ditch on the Beaver Canal. It runs right adjacent to the town of Deaver. 70 years of having an open ditch running right through town prompted the town leaders to do something. The town does not receive water from the district at all. The town does not, the district is a bureau project and we do not have a contract to provide water to town. Problem was it was subbing out the town and overflowing, as obviously open ditches do. So there was an effort by the town and the district with other than WWDC funds to get it into pipe and get it closed in so that they could get the water around town. When they did this 30+ years ago, they missed a golden opportunity. 30 years ago, they were not thinking of closed systems. They weren't thinking of pressurized systems. They were not thinking of pivots, et cetera. Their goal was to just get it into pipe so it quit subbing out the town, and they missed a golden opportunity with this project. But as many of the projects within our district ended up being with limited funding, they were only partially done. This system in itself probably is only about 60% in pipe, but you're looking at 75 to 100 feet, and that's my guess, of elevation change from the top of the system to the bottom. They missed a golden opportunity to pressurize the system. The lower segment with that's to the south on the side of it, the south side of the highway, is major production ground. It just screams pivots. And back then, there wasn't a lot of funding for the pivot systems, and now there is a lot more of this kind of funding. However, it still has its brand of problems with being partially open, mossing, subbing out in other sections. And unfortunately, right next to the cemetery and everything else. This is my first stab at a Water Smart grant. This just really is one of the attempts that I'm trying to make to open up that avenue of funding for the landowners themselves. But with escalating prices of pipe, the sheer nature of this project, trying to start over from the top to the bottom and do it right the first time, probably a little outside the scope of my district's ability. Not that we're not smart, we don't know what to do. It's just that I don't know if we could get it done in time. I'm sure we all suffer with the same problems. I can't hardly get anybody to walk in the door and apply for a job. So it's kind of, there's 3 of us working there. This sort of grant funding will help us to actually get this project accomplished. For the most part, this has been standing out there for many years. Your commission has helped us out with many projects. Infrastructure is a project. The scoring with this to help us conserve water, this would be an on-demand project, meaning that water would never leave the canal unless somebody turns on a valve. So it's a tremendous water savings. For the most part, we're appreciative of everything you've done, and I appreciate your consideration of our project.
Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Hicks.
I see in your application, and you'd mentioned the Water Smart grant, but you're only seeking 30% funding from the Water Development Commission, 30% grant. Have you already received the Water Smart grant? Was one question, and I'm assuming you're applying for the large Water Smart grant, not the smaller one, given the size of this. So where are you at with that application for the Water Smart grant to BOR NRCS?
It is due next month, and JUB and I are working on it. It's a different, and I like I said, I'm very new at this in the Water Smart. This is the grant that is leaning more towards conservation of the resources rather than targeting the water conservation. The water that runs off the ends of this project go into major drains, and they're miniature Grand Canyons, and this is causing us real problems because we are our own drainage district as well. It is going to be done, and it is going to be applied. The deadline is next month. So I'm here asking you today, and next month we'll be submitting our stuff to the federal government on this side of the project.
And Mr. Chairman, just to follow up, because I don't remember, I understand the deadline, but when is the time period which they're projecting approval of those? What I'm trying to understand is the nature of, those are pretty competitive grants with that Water Smart program. If you don't get that grant and we obligate the 30% of the project cost, the $817,000, it just sits there.
Right.
So-
No, you're absolutely right.
So
Yes, sir.
it's an egg and a, before and after, which one are we going to do first?
Yeah.
But I was just trying to understand the process and where you're at. So if we do that, you would have to reapply, assuming that you get it, we're fine.
Right. Okay. If you grant us the funding, I assume it would be under a 5-year time frame for us to accomplish the project. I believe to answer your question is we probably will not have a definitive answer from the Water Smart, the Bureau of Reclamation, for 1 to 2 years. So then that's not exactly the reason why we phased this project out, put it into phases, I mean, but that would probably give us 2 years to actually accomplish that work within the 5-year period if we received the $800,000 from the commission. 2 years, I would imagine, would be the maximum that we'd be out with the Water Smart before we would actually see the funding or begin any construction on this.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Cayley.
Please excuse my ignorance, but I'm not too familiar with the Water Smart grant. Can you kind of just throw that in a little overview for me?
Water Smart is money that's available through the Bureau of Reclamation. They have similar projects like small water projects that give you caps of how much money is, say, up to like $75,000. Water Smart has monies available for rehabilitation of systems. They really are geared towards water conservation, and they're not necessarily available just to Bureau of Reclamation projects. Other irrigation districts and other entities can apply for this funding. I'm sorry, I don't mean to offend anybody, Mr. Lawson. There's a little bit of red tape that goes along with, the Bureau, and so. But the reality is that there's the money is appropriated, but you got to go through a scoring system. And to some degree, if you're not conserving water through your projects, maybe a large drop structure would not score as high. And then, you know, you may not get that particular funding. So they've phased it in portions. The other side of the Water Smart grants is that you have to have matching funds. And that in at 30%, 25%, depending upon the grants. And it cannot be other federal money. It has to come from, say, a state agency or some other program that helps contribute it. So that's not 100% with Water Smart. It's a, you know, 60-40 type of a situation like that. And of course, you have to go through the usual archaeological NEPA filing of the paperwork. This particular grant would actually help us to pay for the engineering aspect of it and the actual construction aspect of it. We're hoping that we'd be able to attain enough funds through the federal side of this that I could actually hire a contractor to do the work. So
Thanks for the education. Appreciate it.
Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Suker.
I just have one on your third page. With this loan, anticipated loan for the 520,000, I see that there's no pre-project, post-project difference in the assessment. So how does that work? Today you're paying $22 an acre. And you are going to the loan apparently for 528. Is there anticipated increase?
yes, sir. And in fact, actually that increase, that is an error on my part in this application. I apologize for any other errors I've made. We you know, not the best accountant. We've already raised our assessments to $30 an acre. Sorry, Mr. Bridges, he's a landowner in the district. He may not be real happy with that, but we've already raised it up to $30. And yes, it is a constant battle. We're struggling with trying to maybe match the increased rates, as say the property taxes, et cetera. But we have already raised that. It's at $30 an acre now. So.
And you anticipate maybe even having to increase it more? You haven't got the loan yet, so you're trying to build a budget from where you're at today.
Yeah, understood.
There may
Understood.
be some additional increase.
Yeah. In this particular request, we're asking for the grant of the 30%.
Right.
The WWDC is the grant portion. The Water Smart is also a grant portion of it. So we don't have to, we're not expecting to incur any more debt. It's just, we're asking for this on a grant program.
Okay, well, answer my question, because I know I hate to see anybody raise rates, but
right,
you know, in this day and world, we just got to do it.
Understood.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Representative Eklund.
I've got a question on your conservation programs and the use of sprinkler irrigation and how does this affect when you go away from the ditch irrigation and the water loss and seepage? How does this affect the other wells in the area? My understanding is part of this drainage, the wells would go dry without the irrigation project going on year round. Has that been thought through real well, or will there still be enough seepage to keep those wells charged?
You know, well, we're required to have a water conservation plan as part of our contract with the Bureau of Reclamation. It does recommend, you know, specific things. If we were to get this place into a pressurized system and this production land was to be put into pivots or sprinklers, we're focused on the erosion and the soil problems in the Bighorn Basin. Our water is appropriated out of Buffalo Bill Reservoir, comes through the Shoshone project, comes to us. This particular project, if it was placed into sprinklers, literally is the tailwater off these farms. I don't call anything wastewater. It's tailwater. literally enters right into Sage Creek and dumps into the Shoshone River and Yellowtail and on to Montana. This one, I can't identify that it would have any effect in charging any wells. There's very little well water, if that is your question, in terms of trying to recharge any of the aquifer. This particular project is, I never want to mean mouth my district, but we were in such a hurry 100 years ago to get landowners settled into that area and get people in there. They got the water there, maybe didn't do the greatest soil studies on how well will this be as production land. They were more concerned about getting settlers out here and getting water to them. We end up with, it's Christmas year round in some of these fields because of the amount of alkali. It's white all the time. And it's just perfect for a sprinkler system. Whereas the flood irrigation is just, it's destroying some of this land. I think it goes the other way rather than recharging the aquifer, that this would help us keep some of that production in ground in production as opposed to the flood irrigation and the soil loss that we end up with it.
Any other questions or comments? Director Gebhardt.
Mr. Chairman, possibly entertain a motion to accept this project.
Do I hear a motion?
So
Motion made by Commissioner Kaylee. Do I hear a second?
I second it.
Commissioner Lawson. Seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Chairman Simpson.
Director Gephardt, I noticed my friends from Dry Creek have arrived, 6.5 hours they've driven to be here with you. If you'd like to take them in order, they're available for testimony.
Mr. Chairman, that's Cottonwood.
We have both Cottonwood and Dry Creek now in attendance.
We'll jump back to tab E under the recommendation notebook. I will kind of set this up and then I'll turn it over. This project is for the Cottonwood Irrigation District Pipeline Replacement 2022 project. The proposed budget is $1.6 million. If you remember correctly from yesterday, we discussed that some of the projects that we are recommending are contingent on a transfer from one account to another. This is one of those projects. So that is caveated in the recommendation. And the request is for a 67% grant, 33% loan to a total amount of $1.6 million. And I will go ahead and turn it over to you for explanation if you'd like.
I'm Kelly Johnson, the president of the Cottonwood Irrigation District, and sorry we're a little late here. We drove a long way. If nothing else, just to thank you for your support. And our project here is a main line from the mouth of the canyon. It's a large pipeline, a 36-inch pipeline transitioning to a 30-inch pipeline. It's an old steel line and we have had some leaks there. And once we remove the soil from that old steel pipe, it just kind of falls apart. As the soil falls off, then the holes open up. So we fix one hole and then 10 feet away, there's another hole, or 5 feet away. So it's a 50-year-old pipeline that we're replacing. And so that's what the funding is for.
Anybody have any questions or comments for Mr. Johnson? Chairman Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Appreciate you being here today. Now, in 2016, you had a master plan completed. And because of limited funds in account 2, the Water Development Office asked you to do it in phases. So this is phase 3. Is that correct? And how many more phases do you have before you'll be complete the master plan?
Yeah, we are. I believe this is phase 3. This is our largest pipe in the whole system. I'm sure we'll have numerous more projects to do before we replace the whole thing. We have 35 miles of pipe in our system. It covers 5,500 acres.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Sorry, Senator Hicks.
Thanks for the compliment, by the way. Mr. Chairman, where are we at with phase two and the $1.54 million that we appropriated for the project 2 years ago?
That project we're hope is ready for bid, and we should start that in the spring. We hope to start construction this fall, but we're just out of time. Over in our area, we can't dig much past middle of November, late November. And so we hope to do that. We're ready to set the bids out now and hopefully get that done in the spring.
And Mr. Chairman, just to follow up, I'm assuming you're going to a plastic pipe and HDP product now, or what are we looking at?
A PVC pipe.
PVC?
Yes.
All right. So my question, Mr. Chairman, back to director is given the escalation and cost on here, even with the 15% contingency fund, if this has not been bid yet, just the materials and energy costs. In the last year, we'll see what the bids come in, but I'm concerned that given where we're at with that appropriation and the escalation of cost as to whether there'll be sufficient funds in there with the 1.5, I guess we'll bid it and see.
I think that's all we can do is bid it and see where we come.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Hicks, that is a lot of the conversation we're having internally right now is what is going on with the bidding climate. There's multiple factors, getting material, getting quotes for material, labor. But at the same point, I don't want to stop doing work just because of a bad bidding and climate. I'm hoping that it gets better. When that happens, I don't know, but as far as I'm concerned, business as usual, and we'll make adjustments as we need to. And we do try to include a little escalator in here if we know they're going to be out a year. We'll have a little inflation, but that's a guess right now as to how high that should be.
Mr. Chairman, just to follow up, so what do we have in the sponsors contingency fund for account 2 level 3 projects? Because I'm afraid that we may not have sufficient funds in there as we go to these projects that have not been bid yet with materials and construction costs.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that's Senator Hicks, that's a great point, and I probably thought about this too late. Might have been a good time to pad that a little more, but right now we've got an uncommitted balance in account 2 of just short of $2 million.
Mr. Chairman, I would certainly encourage the commission as we get to the end of this to look at a recommendation to add additional funding, at least double that in that level 2 or account 2 level 3 construction contingency fund going forward. I just think we're going to need it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Do you need a motion for that?
Well, for discussion though, out of account 2, even with our transfer, we're only showing a remaining balance in account 2 of 1.858 million. If the commission chooses, we can dedicate that all to the contingency, but that leaves us nothing going into next year. So that was one of the reasons that we didn't bring it forward, is we were concerned about funds and being able to transfer that. But it's certainly something, if the commission would like us to look at, we can develop a recommendation to do that.
Senator Hicks.
And maybe it wouldn't be so much as we might not have to do a transfer, but we could potentially provide some authorizing and legislation in the omnibus water bill that would allow the commission to go ahead and do appropriations out of that remainder if it was necessary. so it would be a permissive language. I think we could probably look at doing something like that. I'm just really concerned with the construction number of projects out there. I mean, the cost escalation on this stuff is just going up. It isn't going down in the next year or so. But we can discuss that tomorrow at our select water committee meeting too. But certainly I would like to see that available to the commission should it become necessary. We certainly hate to bid a project and find out that the contingency fund didn't cover it, and then it'd have to sit and wait for the commission to come back, and select water would then have to approve those contracts. You guys could do even a conference call, and actually vote on something like that to amend a contract to make sure that those projects move forward. And so with the amount of construction we have, I think it would be prudent to at least look at that.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think that's a great point, Senator, and I appreciate the conversation. We do have a lot of concerns right now. We got a lot of projects getting ready to bid with, in this climate, we're concerned, and we do try to set up these bids so that they straddle one of our scheduled meetings so that we can react.
Thank you for those comments. I do have one question for you, Director Gebhardt. Is it allowable for us to vote on the phone, or do we have to be in person, or how does that work?
Mr. Chairman, if we had to set up a special meeting, we could set up a virtual meeting.
Okay.
So that is something we can certainly do. We just have to provide proper notice and advertising to do that. But typically, like I said, we try to schedule these bid openings so that they are near a already established meeting, and then we can make any action that we would need to at a normal meeting. I don't know when you guys are planning on bidding, but I would bet that was part of the advice that you received. When are you planning on bidding the?
Well, we were told that they didn't want to bid it too early because they thought that the contractors would not want to bid it and then think that the prices could escalate even further. So we probably February, I believe, is what we were thinking of bidding, and then starting construction as soon as the snow leaves in mid to, sometime in April.
And we have a meeting in March, right?
Yes, we do. We will also have a meeting in January as well. So it's something
Okay.
our project manager can work with you on as far as timing and make sure that we would have time with the regular meeting to address.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Johnson?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Kaylee?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you guys for coming in. It means a lot when you come before us with your projects so that we can turn around.
That's why we're here. So
Appreciate that. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Tommy Dalton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I agree. Thanks, Mr. Johnson, for driving all this way. But to me, I just wonder, with the supply chain being so terrible, I was pressured at my hotel to go ahead and, order this furniture and try to get it in earlier and beforehand. So I don't know if there's a real downside to putting in the bid. If you say, listen, let's get it in and get it purchased and do the bid earlier. I just was wondering if you've thought of the opposite way where prices are just going to keep going up and it takes forever to get. I mean, I don't know how many months I'm going to be waiting for my furniture to come in now, but.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that we could certainly look at that if we, we're just hoping to get the contractors to bid on it without being scared. So if we could purchase the product though, then that would certainly tie that price to that current level. So that'd be a great idea. And we'll certainly look into that.
Thank you. That is a good comment. Do we need a motion then?
Mr. Chairman? I would
Commissioner
move,
Tommy Dalton?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve the Cottonwood Irrigation District pipeline replacement with the contingency on the legislature approving a 7 million transfer of funds from account 1 to account 2.
Do I hear a second? Who was it? Come on. Okay, motion made by Commissioner Tommy Dalton, seconded by Commissioner Choma. All in for the Cottonwood irrigation pipeline replacement. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Director Gebhardt.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, the next project for consideration. Unless you'd like to take a break, it's entirely up to you. We can keep going or take a break.
Okay, let's take a 10-minute break. We'll come back at 20 after. Thank you. That thing couldn't buy a whole bunch of pipe like that and hold on to it. But I know we can't do that, but I'm just saying. That would save us all a lot of money. Yeah. I think with every situation, it's gonna go up no matter what. Coming back down. I hope so. Director Gibhart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's talk about tab G, the Dry Creek Irrigation District Pipeline Replacement 2022 project. I believe we've given them enough time to arrive, and thank you for the recommendation. I do like having them here to talk about it. So this project is the proposed budget is $1.85 million. Again, this is one of those projects that was contingent on the transfer, and that is noted in the recommendation. The request is for a 67% grant and a 33% loan. The loan portion would be at 4% in a term of 20 years. And I will turn it over and let them explain the project.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Roland Gardner, President of Dry Creek Irrigation. And this is Kyle Viegel. He's on the board with me. But like Mr. Johnson before us, we've got a 50-year-old system. Our steel pipe is corroding and a lot of leaks, and we're replacing that. We've got roughly 21 miles of pipe. And this will be, we're asking for funding. This is phase 4 as we've kind of split this up. And it sure means a lot to us, and we really appreciate you guys helping us fund this project. It's something we couldn't have done on our own. So it means a lot to you guys that supported us, and we appreciate that.
Anybody have any questions or comments for Mr. Gardner? Chairman Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gardner, thank you for being here. By the way, Mr. Gardner's like a lot of ranchers and farmers in Star Valley. He has a day job driving bus and works his ranch in the evenings and on weekends. Mr. Gardner, this is your 4th phase. Do you have any idea how many phases you'll need in order to complete all the improvements?
Thank you. The original evaluation that you guys, the study that you guys did, kind of broke it up into, I think, 20 phases, and they were smaller phases. And we've combined some of those phases as we've gone along, the things that kind of make sense to do a little bigger project. So this is phase 4, and we may be able to get done this in about 10 to 11 phases, I'd kind of guess. But we like I said, we're kind of making these a little bigger chunks. We've been able to get funding through the NRCS on each of our 3 previous phases. So that's helped us a lot to be able to keep going and not acquire as much debt. And so that's kind of the plan. We're using some of their funding along with yours, and we raised our assessment significantly when we started this process.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Salmi Dalton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, my question, I guess, becomes, and again, thank you also, Mr. Gardner and Mr. Riegel for traveling to see us. My question is, what if the legislature doesn't approve the $7 million transfer and there's less? How do we prioritize which ones would get it? I guess maybe that's a question for the director.
So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Anselmi Dalton, the priority was based on the program's priority that's in our criteria. And so each of these projects if you look at the tables in tab B of the meeting notebook, those priorities are identified. We had a discussion yesterday. So planning studies are typically a lower priority than construction projects. But because of the complexities of shifting that money between 2 bills and what that could happen or what could occur if one of the bills failed or didn't pass. So we did we go by priority number 1. And then when we get down to the level where the priorities are consistent, we look a little deeper into what's going on. And this project is a priority 3 under our criteria. So that's why it was has the caveat. But then if we get into priorities of equal value, then we'll look at, in this case, one of the priorities that had an equal value of some of the others that did not make the contingent portion. We looked at that because they had, I believe, 70% of outside funding. So they had done a lot of work and they needed our funding to help secure that outside funding. So we kind of thought maybe rewarding them and not making that project contingent. Does that help answer your question?
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Suker.
just one question, I guess, is maybe it isn't in your, or in our document that we have, but give me a concurrence on your increase in rates over the past 3 years, I guess, that you guys have been getting loans and grants and doing these phases on your irrigation projects.
Thank you. When we started this project, our original assessment was $10 an acre. And when we started this process, we raised it to $20 an acre with, but starting with that, there was a $200 per landowner flat annual base fee, and then $20 an acre on top of that. And so we raised on that was the original assessment, we were collecting about $33,000. And now we're up to about $132,000. So I feel like our landowners, we've really stepped up. And as commissioners, we've kind of heard about it from some of them that didn't like that increase. And so that's what we've done on our side to pick that up. We kind of, over the years, when we were getting ready to do this, we'd have this discussion and some of the old time guys would say, we paid for this first system, we're not paying for a second one. And so we had that discussion and we had to do something because our pipe was beginning to fail and eventually it was going to be catastrophic. And so we've made that step and we've kind of felt like we've put some skin in the game. And again, we couldn't do it without your guys' help. So we appreciate that.
Yeah, I guess everything wears out, even our body.
It does wear out.
Age is a crisis to us.
Yes, it does.
So anyway, your 132,000 is equivalent of handling your debt on your annual income. That's where you see it, right? You're taking in 132,000.
Yeah. Yep.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a pretty significant increase, double it.
Yeah, like I said, there were some interesting meetings and some phone calls that we took after we did that.
Anybody have any questions or comments for Mr. Gardner?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve the Dry Creek Irrigation District pipeline replacement contingent on the legislature moving the funds from Water Development Account 1 to 2.
I will second that motion.
Motion made by Commissioner Little, seconded by Commissioner Suker. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you guys for driving all this way here.
You bet. Thank you for your time.
Goshen, right?
Mr. Chairman, yes, the next project is Goshen. Goshen actually has 2. We will talk about under tab H first. This is the Goshen Irrigation District 29.4 pipeline project phase 2, 2022. This request is again contingent on the transfer. And this request is also a grant only request. If you remember, we offer a grant only, which we would pay 100% of the invoice materials on a project. And then the sponsor is responsible for the engineering and the construction of the project. So the request is for $290,000. That is our recommendation. And again, that's 100% material only grant. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Poston to explain the project.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Yeah, this project is just replacing the pipeline. It's a tile line. It's a concrete tile line. And as everybody else has spoke today, a lot of these lines weren't made for pressure, and that's what, they're turning into. We fix the leaks every year, and then we just got a few of them. This is one of them that right now there's 16 leaks in this line and 3,000 feet. So we just like to replace it with PVC, and then we could not have to go there every year and fix leaks. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions or comments? You want to do them both at the same time, or do you want to do separate?
Let's do them separate, please, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, you have a,
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question for the sponsor, and I guess that is material cost. Are you keeping track of where those costs?
The latest one we got, Mr. Commissioner, was when we put the application in with the latest prices from our engineering firm, the 290,000, and that was with there's a 15% contingency in there, but yeah, that was the latest prices we had then.
All right, thank you.
any other comments or questions? Do you have a motion for the Goshen ID pipeline pipeline project phase 2?
I will move the approval of the Goshen ID 29-4 pipeline project phase 2, 2022.
Got your second? Who's that?
Mr. Chairman, I would ask about contingent on the funds being transferred.
Yes. That was the motion, right?
Yeah, I'll add that to it. Wasn't.
Okay. All right, motion made by Larry Suker, contingent upon the transfer of funds. And seconded by Commissioner Craig. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Passed. Motion passed.
Thank you very much.
Let's see the Goshen Tunnel Rehabilitation. Director Gebhardt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next project under tab I. This is the Goshen Irrigation District Tunnel Rehabilitation 2022. As we discussed yesterday, we had quite a bit of discussion about this. The recommendation that the request that we received was for a total project cost of $44.5 million. In our analysis, and what ultimately ended up in our recommendation was that we would look at recommending 49% of a phase project, and the first phase being the design of the project. So our recommendation is based on 49% for Wyoming, and then we didn't feel that a Nebraska entity could qualify to us for our program. So the recommendation then is only for Wyoming's share, for Goshen's share of the cost, and then the 51% for design is still out there. But our recommendation, the proposed budget would be for $1,151,500, and that would be a 67% grant, 33% loan to the Goshen Irrigation District. There were some questions that were asked yesterday, and I believe that some of those answers may be in front of you today, so I will turn it over and let them explain.
Okay. Anybody have any questions or comments for these two gentlemen sitting here?
I do have a
Commissioner
question,
Suker.
Mr. Chairman. So in other words, with this program, if Nebraska fails to grant funds for this, it dies. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, that is not in the recommendation at this point, but it is certainly something that we can caveat that if Nebraska doesn't come up with 51% of the cost, we can make this contingent on that approval of their 51%. If we would choose to, and that would be entered into the omnibus bill that way as well.
Well, that's what I would think, because if we're going to approve it, it's approved based on their step, correct? So, yeah, that's
Yeah,
how we
that
probably
is
have to
correct.
make that motion.
And Mr. Chairman, there was some discussion yesterday of whether we could provide funding or loan to Nebraska. And that has not been fully analyzed yet, but one of the issues that we would have doing that is under our rules and criteria, we can only, eligible entities to our program are special or subdivisions in the state of Wyoming. So our rules and criteria kind of limit us on being able to participate with Nebraska currently. We do not know if there are any statutory issues with that at this point, something we're looking into. But because of our rules, we can't determine that a Nebraska entity would be eligible to our program. So that's the reason for our recommendation of only the 49%, because 49% of the district lies in Wyoming and 51 in Nebraska.
So another follow-up on that, is there a time duration on this project for them to come up with the funds, or is it open for forever?
Mr. Chairman, usually when we contract, we have, or when we appropriate these funds is for a 5-year term. And when we put it in the omnibus bill, construction is usually a 5-year limit on the appropriation.
On the total appropriation, but what about the funding that Nebraska would put into the box to make it work? The 5 years is total construction, right? From the time that we designate the funding through the completion of the project, correct?
That is correct.
But we don't have one to say, okay, now it's 3 years and Nebraska hasn't come up with anything. So what do we do there? Does that 5 years based on this approval stem to what it is to?
Well,
To
Mr.
the
Chairman.
5 years?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Sucre, if you put a caveat on this recommendation that Nebraska has to come up with their 51 before anything could be spent, the way I would envision this occurring is we would go ahead and appropriate the money based on that contingency, and it would have a 5-year appropriation reversion date, a 5-year reversion date. And so at the end of that 5 years, if Nebraska hasn't come up with their portion of the money, then that would revert back to Water Development Account 2. You could put a different caveat on it if you choose to, but typically that would be the timeline for our appropriations.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions or comments for Chairman Simpson? Here.
Picky little guy. This one's bad. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, yesterday we discussed some end user rates per acre, and to justify your request for a hardship of 75-25. Grant, would you mind sharing us with your results of your calculations?
Yes, so after we sat down and looked at some of this with Mr. Coleman's help here. So just to start off, at 2017, we were at $27 an acre. After the fail, we jumped the price up to $32 an acre. Okay, and then so at the 75%, 25 split, we would increase another $5 an acre to 37. And at the 67.33, we looks like it'll be 38.50.
Thank you. That was very helpful. Appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Representative Eklund.
So if the caveat were put in, would that be a help or a hindrance in your negotiating with Nebraska? I'm thinking that it might be a help that none of the money will be available if they can't come up with theirs. Would you have an opinion or?
So with our conversation with the Gearing Fort Laramie Board, the Nebraska Board, there's never been a comment that they would never come up with the money, that there was an issue of them not coming up with funds. They are on the side of the state that is forgotten about, but like I said yesterday, our governors are in both communication over this project. This was a fail. This isn't a leak. Our water stopped. And that water stopped in Nebraska as well. So we're in just, Nebraska is in much trouble as we are with if these tunnels fail again.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a couple comments and then have
Commissioner Craig.
some food for thought. One comment is our big hindrance here is the state line. Other than that, those growers in that area have everything in common. The Western Sugar Company is actually a cooperative that also is active in our area. Very important that they stay in business. And those growers in both Wyoming and Nebraska are shareholders in that company, as well as up where I'm at. But one thought comes to mind, and I think it would probably take some legal changes. Would it be possible for the Goshen district to be awarded the funding in some manner through water development, and then in turn loan that to the Nebraska growers in some manner?
That's a tough question
Yeah.
there.
Mr. Chairman, that's an excellent question, and I immediately looked over to our AG rep Darren Cook, and I see a little bit of panic on his face because he doesn't have an answer. It's what there? The response is we would need some more time to analyze that. As I sit here and think about it, we have time procedurally before this goes in the omnibus bill. It's possible that we can make a preliminary recommendation, and then we would have to do some analysis to see how that would work out. Perhaps the recommendation and could be that if it was chosen to just look at the design, for instance, that we would fund the design to Goshen and that they would be responsible for any sort of reimbursement from Nebraska. But that would have to be contingent upon analysis by the AG office to do that. One issue, as I sit here and think about it, that I see is how would the state recoup that money from Goshen? They would have to collect it, and then they would have to repay us. Perhaps one way to do it would be to provide a 67.33% grant loan for 49% of it, and then a 100% loan for the remainder of the design. That could be one way that we could look at it. That way we would recoup money. It would go through Goshen. They would be responsible for repaying us. I don't know if they're interested in that, but I'm just thinking out loud here.
Senator Hicks.
Mr. Chairman, we do have similar arrangements over in my neck of the woods where the state of Wyoming owns High Savory Reservoir and then contracts back with the Wyoming entity that then contracts to the Colorado entity. Colorado entity through their county assessor collects the property taxes, gives it to their district, and then that district conveys those funds back to the Wyoming district that then repays the Wyoming Water Development for a contract. So this is not an unusual arrangement. We've already got this in place. But one of the things that you could also consider as an alternative, first, let me say what my concerns are, is if we go down the engineering route and we do 100% of the cost of the engineering between the Goshen, that there was some agreement. What I'd like to see is a memorandum of understanding between the two districts that they agree with whatever the engineering design is. What I don't want to do is fund $1.2 million in engineering and then have a disagreement between the two entities that we don't like that engineering design, we want this design. Well, I think that would have to be conditioned upon the next thing that I would recommend, that we go ahead and appropriate the money for the total cost of the design at this point in time. And you could put as a limitation on that contract with them that any future expenditures that Nebraska would have to come back and retroactively pay their percentage of that as part of the construction cost. And so in other words, if we do the 1.2 million at a 67.33 and it actually goes to construction, then you add that 51% of that cost onto their cost of construction to recoup that money. So it's just another alternative out there. But my biggest concern right now is that we get some level of memorandum of agreement with the Nebraska folks that if we do this, whatever the recommendation is for the fix that comes out of there, that they're going to support that. Without that, I don't want to end up to then Nebraska want to hire an engineering firm that comes up with a different recommendation. I don't think that'll happen. It would be a very simple MOU to get that in place. But there is several mechanisms we can address Nebraska's repayment. Back to the scenario I just talked to you about with high savory water. You just would contract with these guys. They're obligated to go get the 51% from Nebraska. Now, surely as a party to that agreement, you would want water development on that agreement and reviewed by our legal attorneys with that agreement. That's the way we did it on high savory. So it's been done before. Been working for 12 years over in my neck of the woods. Works fine. But it's just a process, Mr. Chairman, so it can be done.
Well, thank you for that comment. I think that will assist them in trying to move forward. One thing is, I know that we need to get it done. It's affecting people's lives, not only on our side, but Nebraska side. My opinion, I'm for like funding this, but no, for like the contingent part that not necessarily for that they pay, which I mean, you know, the agreement would be that, but that they come up with some kind of memorandum of agreement that shows their responsibility on paying. So anybody else have any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, can I take a quick recess? I just want to go ask a question. I'll be right back.
Okay, let's take a short recess for 3 minutes, okay? Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, before this goes,
Go ahead, Commissioner Olson.
before this goes to the vote, I must, on this one, I must abstain. So when it goes to a vote, I will sit in the audience during the vote.
Okay, yep, I'll remember that.
Okay.
Thank you for letting us know.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Start talking.
I'm gonna turn it over to Commissioner, I'm not Commissioner. Chairman Simpson, sorry. He's gonna give us a little overview. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Folks, I particularly commission members, I want to make sure that we're on the same page here. So I'm directing you to, we're under tab I, page 1, under the WWDO recommendations. So what staff is asking us to do is fund roughly half of the preliminary engineering / environmental / design. And we're expecting Nebraska to step up and fund the other half. Okay, so our staff's recommendation is for 67% grant, 33% loan. So we can just run with that, and that's the numbers. That's, you can see there under recommendations, that's $771,000 grant and $380,000 loan. Now, I think it's respectful of the sponsor to recognize that they've asked us under a hardship to consider 75-25. That's roughly $100,000 swing in those numbers. So you can run with the staff's recommendation, or you can entertain a motion to recognize the hardship and to pull those numbers down, roughly 100,000 less loan and 100,000 more grant. And they've provided you the information today. It's now bear in mind, the entire Wyoming side is 22 million. If the entire $22 million is granted at the 33% level, it's going to be a $38.50 per acre assessment. If it's funded at the 25% level with a loan, then their assessments are going to be $37.50. So that's the hardship, is roughly, what's the math, $1 per acre difference is what they're asking you to consider, giving them a hardship loan of 25 rather than 33%.
It's the,
So
Mr. Chairman, it would be about $1.50 difference.
$1.50. Thank you. So Director, did I explain that correctly? That the commission has the opportunity with a motion to recognize a hardship and go to 75-25?
Mr. Chairman, Chairman Simpson, that is correct. Statutorily, the commission can go to 75-25 without any changes to statute.
Thank you. Commission members, I wanted to make sure you're all on the same page as that. So thank you for your indulgence.
Okay, Director Gebhardt,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think there's a couple of things to consider here. One is, as Chairman Simpson brought up, is consider the loan to grant ratio. We had a little side conference, and I might suggest something that might work. For this meeting, we can make this approval. If you wish, we can debate it, but I'll offer a suggestion. But then if this is approved, I would like to have the time to research it, and then we can come back in the January meeting to proof this out. So the thought would be that if the commission would like to grant the full design amount, which right now is, the request is $2.35 million for design. My suggestion would be that if we chose to do that, then the 49% of that, which is $1.151 million, would be at a 67% grant, 33% loan, or the 75-25, whatever you choose. But then the remaining, the difference the 51%, which would be roughly 1.2 million, we can finalize those numbers, would be a 100% loan to Goshen. And then it would be incumbent upon them to decide how they want to pay that back. If they can get an agreement with Nebraska to repay that, then I think that would, initially, I believe we would satisfy our criteria because we're only contracting with Goshen. To take it a step further, if you choose to, we could have contingent on an MOA or an MOU with the Nebraska entity. But in general, if we want to fund all of the design, then my suggestion would be that we fund the 49% Wyoming share at the grant loan ratio that you choose, and then provide a loan for the remaining 51% to Goshen that they could get repayment from Nebraska from. And then they would be required to repay the commission that 51% in full. Am I making any sense?
Yes. I do have one question. Even if we do the 51%, 100% loan, are you guys, will you still try to acquire a memorandum of agreement with Nebraska?
Yes, and we already have a memorandum of agreement with the temporary fix that we've started. So we work very well with the Nebraska board. There'll be no issues.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Oh, Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Kaylee.
how does Select Water feel about the full funding? Do you have any?
Chairman
That's
Simpson.
way too much authority, sorry. This is the first time we've heard about it. I'm a little bit surprised that we would float the 100%. Certainly Nebraska, if they want to be a participant, they're going to step up and cover that. And then Wyoming gets its money back, right? Either way, Wyoming gets its money back. The only thing we're doing is just tying up $1.2 million in a loan that's going to come back to us a little later. I think I can work with it.
Can we get a copy of your MOA that's temporary?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that if any MOA, I believe that we would want to see that in its final form. So I think we could make that this whole thing contingent. And one thing I would offer, if that's the direction the commission and Select Water want to go, why don't you give us at least the rest of today and maybe even tomorrow to draft up a motion for your consideration? And then we can discuss that motion. So we're not doing it on the fly. We put some thought to it. And then we can debate a motion either later this afternoon or in first thing in the morning.
That sounds good. Do we have to have a motion on that to change the agenda, or?
I think, Mr. Chairman, if we just had a motion to table this project until, well, we may not even have to table it. We'll wait till the end of the meeting to see how it shakes out. If we need to do it tomorrow, we'll table it at the end of the meeting
Okay.
and bring it up for discussion tomorrow.
Okay, well, we'll just move this item to the tail end of the meeting.
We just won't make a motion on it at this point. We'll readdress it later in the day.
Does that sound okay?
Yeah, and I think I still have, Mr. Chairman, I still have a couple of questions, I guess, for the board. One is as this document that we have before us been entertained to the Nebraska irrigators?
Yes.
And is it in your minutes that you presented it? And is it part of in other words, did they vote on this particular thing, or what was their consensus?
So
You do have minutes that they received it, I guess. That's
their board meeting is today. they have received this.
Because I think that's an important issue here. You know, how do you expect someone else to pay for something when they never had the opportunity to look at the document or the agreement or the dollar amount that's going to go into it? But that's my concern.
So HDR, our engineering
Okay.
firm here, is signed up with Gearing Fort Laramie as well as us. So that HDR represents both boards.
They've given us authorization to speak on their behalf as it relates to funding. And we're working for Goshen, but they are familiar with the process, the project as described in front of you. I can't say is that they've made a formal adoption. I haven't been to they've joined in with GID's meetings, but I have not been to their meetings. But they are intimately familiar with what we're talking about here.
Good. And that's my point. As long as I think they have interest or they've been notified somehow that what we're doing here. The other thing, do we have criteria for this hardship if we make it? Or we just do it? Is there anything in our book, certain limitations or things that we got to look at before we can make a hardship?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Suker, it's within your purview to make a change to the operating criteria. You cannot do it to a statute, but if it's in our criteria, this board can elect to bypass that criteria. I'll make sure I'm on firm ground with Darren. But yes, if you choose to go a different funding ratio than 67-33 up to 75-25, you're fine.
And if we make this deal with Nebraska and fund the 2.2 million, would we put a time frame on their half for the repayment of it? Or would it just be a loose agreement? What would we do there?
Mr. Chairman, I think the best way to handle that would be to put a reversion date in the omnibus bill for this project. And then that, I think the concern is we don't want to tie money up in perpetuity for something that's not going to happen. So my suggestion would be that if 5 years is the appropriate time, that's our standard reversion timeline in the omnibus bills, we'd stick with 5 years. If you want to make it shorter, we can certainly do that. And we can work that into the omnibus bill and just make that the appropriation reverts on a certain date, a certain amount of time. That would probably be the easiest way to handle that.
And the repayment of theirs then could go through the 5-year stature also, correct?
So the repayment, the terms of the repayment, we could establish anything we want. We typically go 4% over anywhere from 20 to 50 years. If we want that to be quicker, we can certainly define the term of the loan.
And that
to
can be
Goshen.
done outside of our conclusion today on making.
It would
this,
have to be
correct?
done before the omnibus bill, so it would certainly be something we could revisit in January, but yes, we can
Okay.
certainly do that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Do we have to have a motion to?
No,
move it to
Mr.
the
Chairman,
end, or-
my only thinking is, I would suggest, or I would like some time to come back to you with a little more thoughtful motion for your consideration. And we'll work on that, whether that's this afternoon or tomorrow morning. But I would like to at least give the district enough information that they're comfortable with so that they don't have to stick around and wait for that discussion unless they choose to. I'd like to be able to allow them to go home. So I would ask that, is that what we want to consider, is the 49% at a grant to loan ratio, 51% complete loan, and then we'll work on any contingencies that we need to as far as timelines and or contingency on a MOU being executed or anything like that. We can work on that. But as long as they're comfortable with our direction, I just want to allow them the opportunity to go home if they choose to.
Another follow-up I had, Mr. Chairman, was if you take the same numbers here now, Nebraska's will be 1.1 loan. No grant.
The actual numbers that we would be looking at, we would. So if we stuck with the 6733, we would grant Goshen $771,500. We would loan Goshen. Let me do the math, and we'll check this, but we would loan Goshen the summation of $1,198,500 plus $380,000. So the loan would be roughly, don't quote me on this, $1,578,500.
And that's their half of the portion. Yeah, I understand that. Okay.
How does the rest of the commission feel about, I guess postponing this agenda item until tomorrow?
I think that's good. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm happy with the way it's going, so.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to say,
Commissioner Almagdal, go ahead.
thank you. I think it's a good idea to postpone it so we can think about it. I just worry a little bit in the direction of Commissioner Sucker's comment. When we changed from the 6733, we sort of set a precedent, and I'm always cautious when you start changing it. At our hotel, when we have people call, there's always something that happened. They can't make it, they forgot to call, and on it goes. And it's every excuse. I just worry. I mean, I agree, their tunnels collapsed, but they're working now. And I just am trying to say, let's be cautious before we just jump into something different. So we don't set a precedent for other people to come telling us they also have a hardship exception.
Thank you for that comment. Director Gephardt.
Yeah, Mr. Commissioner, to that point, the numbers that were ran to look at the assessment, the increase of assessment, the difference between the 67 and 75 is $1.50 per share. That is based on the $44.5 million project, so that's based on the whole project. If we're looking at just the design component, whether we're changing the funding on that number is significantly smaller because it's such a much smaller number. So the assessment is not numbers we talked about. It's based on the total construction project, not just this portion. So there is the opportunity that if we don't want to set the precedents now, we can go with the 6733. And then when we get to talking about the bigger numbers, we can have the conversation again. I'm not advocating one way or the other. I will let the district advocate if they choose to, but that is an option as well.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think my job as president of the GID board is to convey to you guys the amount of loss that we have had with the failure and the hardship that adding another $8, which would $8.50 to an already high assessment is a strict hardship on the majority of our landowners, and would ask that you consider that we are in a very hardship. And thank you for your time, all of you.
Thank you. I guess Commissioner Craig.
I do have a question regarding your water delivery. On a percentage basis, what would be the average percentage of acres that most people either can't irrigate or had to significantly change their operation to continue their operation?
As of this year?
Yes.
This year, we were set on an allocation. And so we were able to deliver allocatable amounts of water this year. So our farmers had to we were set to deliver a foot to the 120. Yeah.
Versus a foot to 70.
Yeah,
So greater than 25%.
greater. And that, yes, that being because we had less storage runoff for this year.
Assuming you had normal storage, what would you think that number might be?
We would be roughly 10% lower right now.
So a 1,000-acre grower might only be able to irrigate 900 acres.
Correct.
That answers my question.
Correct.
We'll just postpone this until tomorrow for our, allow Director Gebhardt and our legal representatives to come up with some kind of document to present to the commissioners. If that's all.
Or
in
later
agreement,
this
that'd be great.
afternoon, or later this afternoon. Or,
I think tomorrow will be better.
okay,
That's fine, Mr. Chairman. I would just encourage you to maybe ask any questions you have of the district so that they don't necessarily have to come back tomorrow is what I'm shooting for.
Okay.
They've been here 2 days. I would also point out that in our criteria, I'll read the paragraph where we can choose to change the percentages. It's on page 16, paragraph D1. It says, the maximum grant shall be 75% for proposed level 3 projects. In order to obtain the maximum grant, the sponsors must demonstrate to the Water Development Commission that the maximum grant is warranted due to severe financial hardship. So that's the authorization to go up to the 75.
Well, anybody else have any questions, or do you guys have any comments for the commissioner?
I guess I have
Select
one
water.
directed to you, Chair. You would like to see the district send you a copy of the MOU or MOA that we have with the temporary fix with Gearing Fort Laramie by tonight?
I would like to have you send it to Director Gebhardt, and then he can share it with us. I'm not too sure exactly what the time frame would be, but I know they would need it, right? Maybe today if we could get it.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think that the current MOA would just be for reference only. If we were to tie something to this, we would want a specific MOA to this, but it could be an example or an illustration of what they already have. I personally am not in a huge hurry for that. If it's okay with the commission, we can get it perhaps next week, and then I can email it to everybody for your use if you want it.
Okay, I mean, well, the reason I wanted to look at it was so it gives us an idea of what their relationship is.
We can certainly try to expedite as quick as we can, and as soon as we get it, if we get it by tomorrow, we'll bring it. I don't know how long it'll take them to get it, but we can certainly shoot for that. How is that acceptable?
That is completely acceptable. Completely.
Sure, I'd like to see that. Thank you.
Okay, you bet.
Okay, I guess if you have nothing else, anybody else has anything else?
I just kind of want to reiterate, to set we have a very good relationship with the Gearing Fort Laramie Board, the Nebraska folks, the farmers were right next door to 90% of them. I mean, family, friends, we work together very well. So I want to ease your tensions there as much as I can. They aren't as much hurt as we were. So, and then just to thank you guys for your time and appreciate you having us here and listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here and keep up the good work. Okay, Director Gebhardt, I guess you can move on. Highland Hanover.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the next project moving on is under tab J of your recommendation notebook. This is for the Highland Hanover irrigation system improvements 2022. Mr. Chairman, the recommendation is for a proposed budget of $4,611,000. And that is a 67% grant, 33% loan. And I will turn it over for a description of the project.
Hello, everyone, commissioners.
Can you please state your name for us?
My name is Dan Madden, president of the Highland Hanover Canal.
Thank you.
Been on the board for close to 20 years. And was here a few years ago on the level 1 study and see a lot of new faces. But so to be familiar with our project, we just have a very antiquated pumping system and our electrical. We're at 60 years plus on the equipment, and just continued repair on the equipment. And now we're just getting to a point that repairs on it is not beneficial. And if we don't do something with this system, we could have very serious problems of getting water to the end of the canal and supplying water for 7,000 acres on this canal, on this pumping system. It's trying to think the exact acres. It's around 4,000, 4,500 acres on this pumping system. We have 4 pumping stations, actually 5, but one of them is just actually with this same pump station. This is pump station number 2 and 5. And we have pump station 1, 3 and 4 are smaller, a lot smaller pumping stations, around 1,000 acres apiece that they pump. They are old systems also, but their pumps are a lot smaller than these, and we're able to, keep them going. And, in the future, yes, there will probably be need to update them also. But as of right now, have a lot less issues with those pumps and electrical controls. Our electrical controls have been an issue. We have been down at times for a good week because we can't get the parts to fix it. The other problem we have is just having somebody knowledgeable enough to even work on the electrical end of this system. So I'm kind of getting a little bit windy, but I think that pretty much tells you what we're kind of looking at. And I know you guys have had all the engineering, the level 1, level 2, and we're just asking for the level 3 clearance. And any questions?
Okay. Well, thank you for being here today.
You bet.
This one here, we've been working on for a while, right?
Yes.
One of the ones that
4 years.
because it's those
maybe?
different levels of canals, right? Okay. Just checking. And I know that one of them pumps feeds the longest canal, right?
What's
That
that?
bigger pump feeds that longer canal.
Yes, this is
Yep.
what feeds our longest
Yep.
canal, most water,
Okay.
most acreage.
All right. Anybody have any questions or comments? I think we've all been working on this for a while. We all know pretty much what's going on.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Insalmi Dalton.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just see like on the page 5 that you said that you are planning on applying for the Smart Water Grant, and are you planning on doing that soon? And what's your timeline for that, or have you already started that process?
Yes, we have applied for the Water Smart grant. And so it is in process as about a month ago.
Yeah, that's that big old canal.
I would like to note, just listening to the last conversation, we are at $36 charge now on our canal. And we are at pretty much a break even every year with that assessment. With your grant and loan, we would jump up to, I believe, $52. And so we are prepared to pay that if we don't get the water smart. That's where we're at situated as far as canal and the landowners. We don't want to at all, but that's kind of our maximum. If we don't get the water smart, but we get your stuff, we would go on with the project, and we would be at that level. But definitely without your loan and grant, we would not be able to do this project. There's no way we'd be able to be up around that $70, $80, $90 an acre. We would have to just continue as we are and try to make it work. So,
Commissioner Suker.
I just have one question. Is that water grant eligible for reimbursement to your loan amount if you get it at a later date?
yes. A later date?
Yeah, if you don't get your SMART grant now and you take this money from the commission, is the SMART grant reimbursable back to the commission?
It's okay. Yes, I would ask.
Can you state your name and speak into the mic?
So Ryan Altenberg with Western Heritage Consulting and Engineering. We've been the engineering firm working with the Hanover District, the Highland Hanover District, and the Bluff Districts, which these are all related. The Highland Hanover's Water Smart Grant that was submitted last week cannot be retroactive. So once it's built or the money's spent, we can't go back and use that money to repay a loan. That's one of the criteria of the Water Smart. You can't go backwards.
So in other words, if you take this money, your grant's out, or you can get the SMART money before we draw any money off of this loan or grant.
So the strategy has been that been moving forward with the commission funds as the primary funding source, and the district is prepared to go forward with the project with those funds and loans. To help out is to apply for the Water Smart funds through the large grant program, which there was $2 million requested in this funding cycle, that the funding cycle would be approved in April is the timeframe for this current Water Smart. If we're unsuccessful in that application, then if we get this funding, we would continue through the engineering process, and before construction, there will be another Water Smart application period in approximately a year, is our understanding, talking to reclamation. So if we're unsuccessful in the first application, the intent is to go and then have a second application. There's two different funding pots in that next application, a small project fund and a large project fund. The small project fund is limited to around 75,000 in its current state. So the intent for the district is to go ahead and apply for those funds also. The intent then would be to utilize those funds in lieu of the loan money. There are some ineligible expenditures that the district would either use some of their backup funds for, or use your loan. And when I say ineligible, they're just ineligible for the Water Smart. They're not ineligible for the funds we're seeking today.
Thank you.
Little confusing even on my part.
Yeah, that's right. Federal funds are like that all the time. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I
Commissioner
move that
Yankee.
we accept the recommendation and approve this level 3 project for the Highland Hanover irrigation system improvements.
Mr. Lawson, or Commissioner Lawson, Go ahead.
I said I second,
Oh, okay.
unless it was already seconded. I think it was.
It don't matter. Motion made by Commissioner Yankee, seconded by Commissioner Lawson. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, same sign. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time and all your efforts. Appreciate it.
Hope we can help you out here. I do have one question for you before we move on, and it's kind of similar to what they're doing. I don't know if that smart, how that smart grant works, smart water grant. And to tell you the truth, I don't think any of us would. I mean, if we could get like some kind of update just to kind of give us an overview of what it entails, that would be easier for us to understand how to move forward on certain projects.
Mr. Chairman, we would try to pull up a summary sheet on what Water Smart does and what it can be used for. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
We'll try to prepare something for you and probably email it out.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, I guess we can move forward here. Director Gebhardt.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under tab K in the recommendation notebook, if you remember correctly, yesterday we discussed this project for the interstate irrigation and reservoir irrigation district improvements phase 2. They have withdrawn this application. So it fits with our recommended zero funding. So they wanted to apply this application for next year after they get some of their ongoing work completed that we've already appropriated for. So.
Okay, that's good. Thanks. What is the next one?
Mr. Chairman, the next one is the Level Monkur lateral phase 2 2022 project. And this is a grant only request. This would be for 100% of the grants. The total request is for $991,000. And this project is contingent upon the transfer from water development account 1 to 2. And I will turn it over for explanation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Willie Bridges. I'm a consultant for Level Irrigation, and they've asked me to come down and address the commission today. This project is a second phase of the Monkur lateral. This is a lateral that is about 19,000 feet long. We did the first phase and got the pipe buried this last winter. They utilized it this summer. That project is not quite complete, as that there's some work to be done on a screening system that was put in with it, but it'll be done now that the water's out of the canal. And they'll be finished with that by the end of the year. This project, the second phase is 9,900 feet of PVC pipeline to be buried to create continue the pressure system for this lateral. The district is asking for a materials only grant. So it would be 100% paid for the materials. And then they will do fund the rest of the installation either through a Water Smart grant that they have applied for, or if they are not successful with that, then they will borrow the money and pay through an increased assessment.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions or comments for Mr. Bridges? Thank you. Do I hear a motion?
Also move that we grant Level Monkur lateral phase for material only. Is that right?
Yes.
In the amount of $991,000. contingent on our $7 million transfer.
Okay, motion made by Larry Zucker to approve contingent on the transfer, seconded by Commissioner Craig. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Director Gebhardt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The last of the count 2 level 3 project recommendations is the Owl Creek Irrigation District System Improvements Project. The proposed budget, recommended budget is $5,040,000. And that is a 67% grant of the total cost, a 5% loan. So the $5,040,000 is 67% grant in the amount of $4,690,000. And then a loan portion, which is 5% of the total cost, equal to $350,000. And then I believe that they have a Water Smart grant for the remainder of the project. And with that, I will turn it over to you.
Hello, my name is Paul Ward.
What's your name again?
Paul Ward.
Paul Ward.
Yes. This is Gene Skelton. I'm on the chairman, I'm a board member. We were just coming before you today to ask for this help. We are a fixed loan project, so of a burial wreck project way back when, back in the 1950s. We're about a 60-year-old infrastructure that we want to bring up to speed and better pumps, better efficiency. We also have about 4,400 acres under this district, about 103 users. We are assessed at about $36 right now, $36.81. And then if we do get this money, we'll be, after the project, we'll be jumping ourselves up about $2 an hour, about $2 an acre. We have applied for the Water Smart grant. So that's under the way.
Thank you. And can you state your name?
Gene Skelton.
Gene, what was it?
Skelton.
Skelton, okay. Anybody have any questions for Paul or Gene? Myself, I'd like to go see that lift pump out there. Just to look at it, you know, I mean.
Yeah,
it's something different. I just hard to wrap my head around it.
We have to lift our water twice. So it comes up out of the river and then they lift it to the first set of canals, and the other half of the acreage has to get it lifted one more time up to the higher level. So
That's the one I was talking
yeah,
about.
it's
Yeah.
really not that fancy when you see it.
I bet it's not. It's just, it's hard to
It
see
is.
how that
It's
works.
amazing. Yeah.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
I just have one. Is that, Mr. Chairman, is that smart grant already in place? Or is it a application for it?
Yeah, we applied just like the guys from Highland Hanover. We applied for 2 million as well. The application just went in this last week, and we'll know in around February. Between February and April, they assume they'll let us know.
So this project would be, Brandon, I guess contingent on that grant, is that right? If we made a motion on it, is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, it doesn't have to be. I believe it would be up to the district to decide if they want to pay for what they don't get in loan or grants. But as far as we're concerned, we wouldn't necessarily have to make it contingent on that grant.
Okay, so you could live with less if you had to. And you would, it just change the scope of the work, is that correct?
Exactly.
All right, thank you.
All right, do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the recommendation for the 67% grant, 5% loan.
Motion made by Commissioner Craig to approve the All Creek District Systems proposed budget. And seconded by Commissioner Somley Dalton. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Sure.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I know it's getting close to lunch, but I believe that the next project on our list, I believe we have somebody probably in the waiting room. And I believe that that's probably the last person we'll have waiting that I know of right now. So if it's okay with the commission and the chairman, if we can talk about the Laramie Valley Diversion Structure 2020, and then if you'd like to break for lunch after that, I believe that we can free up some of the people attending virtually.
Okay, that sounds good. Yep, we'll move forward then.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we had some discussion on this project yesterday. This is Laramie Valley Diversion Structure 2020. We talked yesterday about, and Abigail, if you could let Kevin Carrico into the meeting. Thank you. We had some discussion on this, that some of the issues during the design that popped up, including sinkholes and potential blowouts further upstream. So the request is to modify the project to move the diversion structure further upstream. This would be an amendment. The total project budget would be $1.85 million, but we've already appropriated $1.15 million. So our recommendation is to fund or to amend the difference of the two projects. If you remember, we had a conversation about any of the engineering that had been paid previously would be worked into that. So we would not be paying for that portion of the engineering that is not used. So that just kind of works itself out. So the recommendation from the office is to amend the Laramie Valley Diversion Structure project by and add $700,000. And that would be 67% grant, 33% loan. And we do have somebody from the district on virtually if you would like.
Okay. Can we get the people that's on the virtual to say your name and what your role is, and then give us a description or an overview? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Kevin Carrico. I represent the Laramie Valley Municipal Irrigation District. And we visited yesterday about the proposed amendment to the level 3 project that is currently in place to move the diversion structure approximately 1.1 miles upstream and to a segment of the river that is less braided and is at a more suitable location for the diversion structure. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have in addition to yesterday.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hicks.
Just comes to mind, Kevin, a question that I forgot to ask yesterday. At one point in time, I know there were some concerns with fish passage in the Little Laramie River and stuff. And so what's the conceptual designs that you have for this, and will it facilitate fish passage on this diversion structure?
So that'll be twofold with the relocation of the diversion. One would be a fish passage structure incorporated into the revised design. And then the second part of that would be dismantling the existing structure to make sure that there was no impediment to fish passage there as well.
So you would have so let me paraphrase what I thought you said, is there would be a separate structure appeturant to the main diversion structure. So a fish ladder or some type associated with this. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And is that part of the project budget now? And are you seeking other project funding to incorporate that?
It is part of the budget, and we are seeking additional funding from third-party sources to help defray that cost.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Larry Zucker.
I just had a quick question on the rates. With this revised budget, I don't see any rates in here. Do you anticipate, if you have rates, which maybe this reading material is pretty small, but if you have them, is there any consensus of an increase? Or what is the rate today, I guess, per CFS?
Yes, the current rate that the district is assessing its members is $3.25 per acre for irrigated acre. And the district is willing to increase those assessments as need be to pay for this project.
But there's no anticipated rate change today. Approved by
We've
the-
increased the district's rate. I'm sorry if I cut you off, sir.
I'm sorry, we can't hear you. Maybe you have your mute on. I'm not sure.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
The district traditionally has had a rate of $2.50 per irrigated acre. Because of the ongoing concerns with the diversion structure and monies that the district is having to put Band-Aids on the structure, they've increased it to $3.25 about 3 years ago, and they've kept it at that rate as we move into this repair. And we anticipate that the rate will need to go up to pay back the loan to some degree.
That rate seems like it's considerably lower than any peers we talked about today. But, you know, you're real fortunate if you can keep it there and make it operate. That's what I'll say about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions or comments? Okay, does anybody want to entertain a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve the Laramie Valley diversion structure.
Motion made by Commissioner Little to approve the Laramie Valley diversion structure. Seconded by Commissioner Solomon Dalton. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Thank you for being online today.
Thank you for your time today and yesterday.
Sure. Director Gebhardt.
Okay,
move
Mr.
forward.
Chairman, thank you. I don't know if the group would like to break for lunch, but it looks like we will have a fairly short afternoon to go through the remaining projects. I believe that's all we have on the agenda. So if you want to schedule your lunch time around that, and maybe take a little longer lunch, that's entirely up to you, but it'll be a short afternoon and we would have time to cover everything.
Okay. Let's see what time it is here. Noon right now. Should we take the lunch and then come back in what hour? Hour and a half? Okay, yeah, that'll give us time to drive all the way across the other side of town.
Does
Mr.
anybody
Chairman.
know of any eating facility close to this?
I have some information for you. So
Sorry, Chairman Simpson would like to speak to you guys.
thank you. So down below us is just like Starbucks with packaged sandwiches. The student union is just down off the hill. Yesterday, a student taught us how to navigate that. We go through the neighboring building, drop in an elevator 4 floors, and you end up on the same level as student union. So they have a cafeteria there that you're able to enjoy. I'm going to eat there. You're welcome to follow me. I know the path. I think it's fun to hang out with our college students at in Casper and see what that life's all about. So that's an option. Other than that, I think you're leaving the campus in order to find additional food sources.
Okay, I guess we'll meet back here at 1:30.
Commissioner, I
Right.
mean, Chairman, we were working on trying to find a place for us all to have dinner. I just wanted to know the number because I talked to, we called out to John Johnson, asked him, but they only had a certain size, but they were trying to move the parties around. Is everyone interested in going to dinner today? Or there's some people that have plans already for today, for tonight, for the,
I'll go.
you have plans already? Yeah.
Yeah, raise
Who
your
would
hands.
go? Okay, so we might be able to fit in this smaller room. I'll call John Johnson back. You want to raise your hands again for us real fast, just so we know if you're going tonight with us? $13 might fit. I'll call him back in again. All right, and we were trying to arrange that at the private room at Fire Rock, so I'll try to follow up with John Johnson during lunch. Okay, thanks.
Thank you for setting that up. Thank you, Riley. I guess we'll meet back here at 1:30. We'll take our lunch break. Thank you for coming.